For over half a century, whenever Indians looked up at a trail of fire and steel pushing through the atmosphere, they knew exactly who was behind it. It was a point of immense national pride. From launching early satellites to sending probes to the Moon and Mars, India's achievements in orbit relied on a single entity, the Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO. Space exploration has changed. It's no longer just for deep space science. Those satellites spinning overhead form the invisible infrastructure of our daily routines. Every time you navigate with GPS, track a food delivery, transfer money through a banking app, or check a severe weather forecast, you are pinging hardware floating hundreds of miles above your head. Because of that reliance, the global market is demanding vast constellations of small satellites. Companies around the world need to put hundreds of these devices into orbit every single year to keep their networks running. Orbit is now a bustling, multi-billion-dollar commercial supply chain, and keeping that supply chain moving requires serious freight capacity. This chart illustrates the core problem India faced. ISRO, which operates as a scientific and deep space R&D agency, had to process two completely different types of traffic. They were building complex missions to study the sun, while simultaneously fielding requests to launch a high volume of commercial hardware. Pushing both through a single government pipeline created a severe backlog. Without enough rockets to launch these commercial payloads on demand, international customers looked elsewhere. India left billions of dollars of global market share on the table simply because it lacked the launch capacity to keep up. To fix this supply and demand crisis, the Indian government made a historic policy pivot. They officially opened the domestic space sector to private enterprise, inviting startups to design, build, and fly their own orbital hardware. To secure a place in the future global economy, the state dismantled its own space monopoly. One of the first major entities to emerge from this policy shift was a startup called Skyroot Aerospace. The company was founded by former ISRO engineers who understood exactly what the industry needed. Their primary objective is building Vikram-1. When it flies, it will be India's first privately developed orbital rocket, meaning it can carry actual satellites high enough and fast enough to keep them in space. The vehicle is named in honor of Dr. Vikram-1, the physicist who laid the groundwork for India's national space program. Getting hardware into orbit requires perfectly synchronized valves, extreme pressure management, and materials that can survive the violence of launch. Skyroot has to prove that a private domestic startup can engineer to those exact tolerances without a government safety net. If Vikram-1 places its payload into orbit, Indian space technology transitions from a purely national capability into a competitive commercial product available to global buyers. Public concern often centers on whether these new private startups are trying to replace ISRO. In reality, the two sectors are moving toward different objectives. The industry is establishing a two-track strategy. On one track, ISRO focuses entirely on deep space exploration, national security, and cutting-edge R&D. On the other, the private sector takes over low Earth orbit, providing affordable, high-volume commercial freight to capture the global market. It operates like a teacher and their students. ISRO built the foundational knowledge over decades, and now its former engineers are using that knowledge to build a global business. Rocketry remains incredibly volatile. You are pushing physics to its breaking point, and early test failures are a standard, accepted reality of aerospace engineering. A successful launch triggers a domestic ripple effect throughout the Indian economy that goes far beyond a single mission. Building an active private space sector requires vast physical infrastructure. We are talking about the construction of specialized R&D centers, manufacturing units, and a supply chain of factories just to source the components. those facilities need staff. An expanding commercial space industry creates a consistent demand for high-tech jobs, driving recruitment for young AI specialists, expert data scientists, and advanced systems engineers. Once a private company proves it can safely deliver payloads to orbit, it signals stability to the market. That reliability attracts foreign direct investment, encouraging international tech corporations to consider India as a primary launch site. By building out this commercial infrastructure, India positions itself to become a primary hub for global launch services. Vikram-1 is the technical proof of concept for that future.